Thank you, everyone, for coming. Um, I was gonna just jump in and see if anybody had any questions, but that may be hard. Uh, you're welcome to ask a question now if you'd like, um, or anything that has stuck out to, in particular, to the things we've talked about over the last 10, 11 weeks. Man, 11 weeks. If there's anything that, whatever sticks out the most, if you had a question or comment or thought about that. And if you don't, I'm going to start babbling. You know me, I'll go. So today, last week we talked a little bit about what we can look at for in kids, and I'm going to park on kids for the next little while. And then more tool development. I'm talking about EMDR, and maybe even train on how you can do EFT. We just have so much to cover in the next. We had 2 months left. We get to like the last week of May or something like that. So we'll just keep diving in. And like I said, this is like a semester of maybe more than that, like a year of university work. So this is pretty cool. This is fun for me. Hold on, let me get a drink. So last week we talked a little bit about what symptoms can look like in infants, what to look for in infants. And we talked about why is there such a big difference, because infants' brains are so non-developed compared to the adult brain. Just how many synapses there are. The infant's brain, the first big push goes until 24 years old. So the adult is very different. One of the things that was concerning to me is that adults, we talk to kids and we give them experiences as adults. Oh, well, they can handle it. They're a kid. That's not the truth. They don't have the physiological capabilities that an adult does, even to have the same conversations or to hear the same things that an adult has. And that can be very stressful for the child's brain, and stressful for the growth and development. And they start to have symptoms of stress. And like I said last time, and I'll stand by this again, that the fact that you're on here as part of the community, you're already different and unique. You're already saying, I want something different for myself, for my family, for my kids, for my community. So you're already different. So when we talk over the next few sessions, it's really going to be about how we can recognize things in the community that are kind of red flags for us. And there'll be some things that exist in me that I think, I need to work on that. When I first started learning about this stuff, I don't know how many times I've said to my friends that, man, I wish I would have known that before. When I was first having kidlets, I wish I would have known that. But we know what we know, and we change and we grow, and that's part of being human. So let's keep going then. So I want to dive into preschool kids. And if you're new, I'm not sure if there's anybody new, but I'll do my qualifier here at the beginning. That there's so many, and we've actually talked about it here in this course, that there are so many things that are culture based that are shown to be not just things that help us deal with trauma, which I'm more into the healing of the stuff, not just the dealing of the sense of overwhelm. And there's things that happen culturally, dance, language, song, ceremony, spirituality. All these things have been shown to help heal trauma, not so much deal with it. It helps the vagus nerve. There's physiological things going on when you're doing these behaviors that actually help the body help itself. So I'm down with all that stuff. But my approach is going to be more, what can we do? What can we look for clinically or therapeutically? That's my approach. And more practical hands-on tool things that you guys can have in your homes, or if you're a teacher in your classes, or if you're just a parent. So let's talk about infants. remember we talked to infants with they may be hyper aroused. Remember what hyper arousal is? Is this charge here? Hey, hold on. Our buddy, the electrical charge, is already in them, even as infants, and it's going to places because it's trying to figure out how's the world, is a good, safe place, and if it's not, then it gets them engaged to survive that good, that state that is chaotic, that place that is chaotic. So there's hyper arousal, wailing, gasping, flailing. That's their tools to tell us that something's going on. If those things are ignored, there's a lot of shutdown. That they'll sit quietly, they'll dissociate. Their little brains are just dissociating, and they learn that as a tool for the world, that to live in this chaotic environment, I just have to not be part of the environment. It's not even safe to be in my body, so I'm just unplugging everything that's in my body. And those are the ones, like I said last time, that we consider, oh, they're a good baby. But actually, they're probably in overwhelm. Qualifying statement: not every baby's like that. Not every baby that doesn't cry is like that. Maybe they're having all their needs met, and they don't need to make that kind of hyper arousal. Maybe their needs are being met, so they feel content. But again, we can't paint everybody with one brush. We have to have a multitude of brushes and know that it could it be this? So when a baby, remember at a powwow or a ball game, and a baby just is done with being an overload, they just shut down. We as adults, trauma-informed adults, need to kind of be aware of that, kind of have that on the back burner. That baby is maybe feeling unsafe in that moment. So they need calm, they need safety. If you remember our talks about the vagus nerve, number one thing, we can say all these things and attempt to do all these things. The number one thing is, are they safe? Not just saying you're okay, you're safe, but us as adults being okay and happy and well and safe, so they can borrow that from us, and then they can recharge, they can get safety from us. So as the infant's central nervous system is still immature, it can't self-regulate. That's why when it can't even self-regulate temperature, for crying out loud. That's why you should dress your baby how you dress. If you're cold, dress warm, then dress the baby how you would dress. If you're warm, then the baby's probably warm. They can't self-regulate temperature. And so they're just reptilian in that way. They just kind of, whatever the environment is, that's who I am. So don't leave them in the sun, those kind of things, because they can't regulate their temperature, and they can't tell you that they can't regulate their temperature. It's just part of being a baby. And it's part of well parenting, to teach the baby that I'm going to attune to your states, your physiological states, your emotional states. I'm going to connect to them, so then you can feel safe and grow up with a hardy nervous system. So when stressful things come along in the future, you have internal tools. And they just require us to do that. And like I said, you guys are already there. You're the fact that you're on here, you're already leaning into all this stuff. But maybe we can coach some of the people in our communities along just a little bit by learning some of this stuff. Your actions send a message to the baby's brain. Who is safe, who is protecting me? Even that auntie that comes along who says and does that to the cheeks, and the baby's like this. And the baby's like that. And then you say, well, hey, back off the cheeks there, Missy. That actually sends a message to the baby's brain saying, oh, that person's got my back. That person is there to take care of me. Because you're not letting other people harm the baby. And they don't know that cognitively. Where's my brain here? Remember, the cognitive processing stuff is way up here. So they're not saying, yes, well, that person she is mother, and she doesn't even have all that language. She doesn't know your mother. She just knows that you're the one that is around a lot, and you smell good, and you provide food. And so they recognize, oh, mom, and that person just protected me. Lots of good things happening here. But if those things aren't being met, even the simple protection thing, maybe the mom doesn't feel comfortable saying to the auntie, don't squeeze the heck out of my baby's face. And then that can be distressing to a baby, to a little one. And as I've said before, the children whose needs are being met in this way create like a sixth sense. that they know what environments are safe and what environments don't feel safe. And they can trust, there you go, this one. They can trust their internal barometer that says, there's something not right here. And just like I shared that story a long time ago about when we ate ice cream up in Canada, and that guy came and shared and sat with us for a long time. And Gracie said, "Can I sit over there, Dad?" And then she said, "My stomach just felt funny." Being the capacity to read the body. That doesn't happen accidentally. It happens from infancy, recognizing safe environments. Because if everything's always chaotic, how do we have a barometer for what is chaotic if everything's always chaotic? So if we know safety, and this thing and something's happening that doesn't feel like safety, then we think, oh, this doesn't feel like how things should be, and I need to be away from this. You can give your kids like a sixth sense for safety. That's pretty awesome. So when these things occur, we don't shame the baby when they get hyper aroused like that. Don't tell them that they need to toughen up. Show them that there's a safe exit plan, for lack of a better word. There's a safety outlet. What we do in traumatized homes with traumatized parenting is maybe we don't have the tools sometimes, and we say something like, "Well, toughen up, shut up, quit crying." We get all resi like that, and so they just learn this is bad, and maybe I'm bad, and then because there's no compassion, there's no comfort, there's no safety. And now hear me say this, that there's spots for that. When we play basketball outside, and Jack, my 9-year-old, when he was just learning how to shoot and dribble and things, and maybe Parks gave him a hip check when he was coming through the lane, and Jack falls down, and he wants to cry, and I'll say, "Listen, check a look at Jack," and I'll brush off his knee, and I'll say, "You're okay. Let's keep playing." And jump right back in here. So I let him know I was there, I was present, I was safe, and I also challenged him to say, "Well, in this situation, this is appropriate. This is okay." So we have to use different brushes for the different paint brushes. If we have just one tool for all parenting, if it's the get up, quit whining tool, we're teaching the child that there isn't a safe, there's not a safety outlet. It's all chaos, and I have to be this. And so we're shrinking the experience of the child based on how they're coming to know us, the world, through us. I'll give another example. I might have shared this with you, but I'll share it again. I'll pick on Jack again. I think he's right outside the door. Jack, you can't hear me. Let's talk about him. Okay. We have a 4-wheeler type thing, and a few years ago, it was rainy out. It was right during this time. It was March Madness, but it was rainy, and it was all muddy in the yard and everything. And the kids asked if they could ride it, and I said, "Yeah, but go slow," because I was, they were loud in the house. I get to watch March Madness with the kids outside. Shoot, come on, man. So I said, "Yeah, but go slow. And everybody wear a helmet." And so they went outside, and I was sitting there watching March Madness. I was maddening it up. I was madnessing it up. And we had a big back window. And I was sitting in my rocking chair, my Archie Bunker chair for you old schoolers. What's up? And they were going so slow. It took them about 15 minutes to go like across the back window. And they kept waving. And I kept waving, trying to watch TV, and they kept waving the whole time. I was trying to watch basketball. And finally, they get across the window. And about 30 seconds later, Parks comes, my son, my little frantic child, comes running into the house and he says, "Dad, Grace got in a wreck and Jack is on the ground." He's just screaming it. And I thought, how bad of a wreck could it be? They were going like about a quarter mile of an hour. And so I said, well, hold on. And I go outside and I put my coat on and go outside and get ready to go around the back. I check myself first because they're going to social reference me. How I am in this moment, they're going to decide, here's how we are in these moments. So I have to check myself and then get a bunch of different paintbrushes out. Because if I use the one, then maybe that's not the one that's necessary. So I go around back and it looks like they hit a stump and they were going a quarter of a mile an hour. So they're like, you see Austin Powers when he was trying to get away from that steamroller thing. That's how I picture it, because it took them forever to. And Jack probably wasn't hanging out because they were going so slow. He might have been sleeping, and he just kind of rolled off. And I imagine it took him about 3 rolls to get off because he was going in slow motion. And he finally on the ground. Then he realizes he's on the ground and he just starts crying. And Parks is running in the house like this is going to be a gross scene, Dad. And I go back there and I check out Jack, make sure everything's okay. And I said, and Gracie feels so bad. She said, "Dad, so like that." And I said, "Listen, it's okay, Gracie." And I give her a hug and I said, "You didn't see that stump there, even though it's been there the entire time we lived here." And so I give her a kiss and I said, "Let's go inside, Jack." And he's crying because it was scary. It jolted him. And so we go inside because March Madness is on. And so we go inside and we sit down and I'm rocking him. And I say, "Go ahead and cry. Go ahead and cry, son." And I'm holding him. And I said, "You're my deal, sonny boy." And I was sitting there rocking. Why do I encourage him to cry? A few reasons. One, I want him to know that this is different than skinning your knee in the basketball court outside. This is different. This is a different thing. To his little, at that time, probably 5-year-old brain, to his little 5-year-old brain, maybe this was a big deal because his brain's 5 years old. It's what, 30% done developing, 25% done developing. Maybe this is a big deal to that little brain. And it needs to know who the safe people in his world are. So I pick him up and I say, "Go ahead and cry." Why cry? Because you know that the pH levels in tears vary based on what the situation is. Tears of happiness have a different pH than tears of sadness or anger or joy or frustration. They all have a purpose of cleansing. Here's the big word, of healing. So when we talk about healing tears in our community, that's not just a cool saying. That is, there's science behind that. It helps cleanse, it helps heal. So I said, "Go ahead and cry, and you're my deal." He cried for about a minute. And, it wasn't a big deal to me. I mean, I got to watch a basketball game. I got to hold my son. He got to have a healing cry. And then I said, "Do you want to watch the game some more?" And he said, "No, I'm going to go back outside." End of the whole thing. Whole thing lasted 3 minutes. We know how we were raised in many of our homes. So part of us healing our homes for the future, for the community, for ourselves, is how am I going to be in this moment? How am I going to treat my children in this moment? I said this last week because I totally am down with this. Then what we know about epigenetics is then this sense of safety and healing reverberates generationally. Because what's he going to do with his boy? My grandson someday in the future, he's only 9, he doesn't have any kids. But in the future, how is he going to raise his boy when a moment like that arises? What's he going to do? And he's going to go back into his memory and say, "Here's how I was treated, and here's how I want to treat my son," and so on, and so on, and so on. And often when I work in communities, I hear a lot about, we have to take care of the kids. The kids are the future, which is absolutely true, but it starts with us, the adults. The kids, they require us as adults to show them, to social reference, to create safety and let them borrow our safety so they can develop resiliency. Resiliency doesn't have to come out of hurt. Resiliency can come out of strength, can come out of good things. So let's serve up resiliency in a different kind of way. Again, if you're on this, oh, you're already there. You're down already. But so this is for information that you can share into the community. Let's keep going. Children often, excuse me, re-experience trauma as if it's still happening. And they show you through their actions. Like I've shared with you about the kids that I've worked with that have been screaming under desks, that get in fights in gym class, that have trouble pendulating when they're playing alligator hunter. Their body just says, I recognize this. I know what this is. And they start re-experiencing it. It's not so much a recalling, a remembering, bringing that memory of the past into the present, remembering. It's reliving. It's re-experiencing the trauma over and over again. And we can look at it through those behaviors. We can look at it through play. And play is an aspect of trauma. It lacks imagination. And this is important where you're watching kids, that their play has fluidity, their play has some flow to it. Play is super important because we learn the rules of social engagement. We learn rules of community problem solving. We learn collaboration. Play has always been a way for children to develop those skills in a set of peers. And one of the things that COVID season did was it took that away. That they took the hoop off the playground, basketball hoop, and we couldn't go to the playground and can't touch anything. So it took play, which was imagination. And in traumatized homes and traumatized community, imagination is already limited. So it doubled down on, let me limit imagination in the community. So the traumatized play, when you're watching the kids, lacks imagination, it lacks variety. It may come from desperation, and it doesn't offer the child a sense of relief, a sense of completion. It's just maybe it's an anger, conflict-laden play where dolls are hitting each other repeatedly. I talked about this last week, holding a doll's face underwater. Maybe if the child had a drowning experience, or in a house that they say the house is on fire and there's no way for the doll to escape. And so it actually is them acting out their traumas over and over and over again. Children who've been beaten by siblings or seen siblings beaten may play those roles out with dolls. And they may play out in either they're perpetrator or they're the victim. So let's say I have a little guy here, and strangely, I don't have another little doll on my desk, but let's say my brain is here. And so this guy is always beating this one. And I could play the victim of stop, please stop. So I'm the victim, or I could be the perpetrator saying, shut up, you don't say that anymore. I'm gonna kick you. So we may alternate roles depending on how the child is experiencing it in that moment. And so look at how they're playing, the role they're taking on during play, and does play have any kind of completion? Is there any kind of satisfaction involved in their play? They might have nightmares, they might have an obsession. All they talk about is drownings or fires or things like that. In school, on YouTube, I know kids get on YouTube in schools. Maybe they're watching drownings or houses burn on YouTube. They become obsessed with it. I've heard this a lot in classes, and I've shared this with you last week, that my kids always ask every day, what are we going to do tomorrow? They always ask that. And it started after our tornado. What are we going to do tomorrow? That's been the remnant of the trauma of the tornado. They want to make sure the world's going to be here tomorrow, and that we're going to be here tomorrow, and there are going to be good things tomorrow. So we could be in the middle of something awesome, and they'll say, what are we going to do tomorrow? And I'll say, well, let's just enjoy what we're doing today. But their brain is fired and wired to say, well, I need to know for sure that that's going to happen. That's going to be there. So kids will barrage with questions to help with self-regulation. And I get it, that self-regulation. When we get there, who will be there? What are we going to do tomorrow? They may have heightened fear of ghosts or monsters. They may have just more generalized fear. Fear of public places. And we really want to monitor those things. It's natural for a child to maybe have some fear of the first day of school, or going to the doctor. Those fears are natural, and so part of our role as parents is to let them know, almost transferring the safety. Well, this person is safe, and bring the teacher over. This is my friend, teacher person, and they're safe, and I'll be right here when school's out, and offering some constancy. That just because I'm out of your sight, your eye line, doesn't mean that I have disappeared. And that's part of human growth and development. But that's more of an infant thing. When when you play peekaboo with a child, okay, you guys know I'm still here, right? Even though I'm not on screen. Okay, a child doesn't know that. A child just thinks, what, dude disappeared right in front of me. There's no constancy. An infant. So if your child is kind of delayed in that you are constant, even though you're not present, we need to create more safety for them. They may have more feelings inside than they can manage. So, and the sensation base, it's overwhelm. And so they're not sure how they internalize all this. And so it just looks like this big explosion. So they have more a sensation base. Maybe their heart's pounding, they're tingly, they're hot, their stomach is tight. So they have all this, and they don't know what to do with it. And particularly in traumatized homes, they don't know what to do with it, because they haven't been taught healthy, well ways of releasing it. In a traditional way, it could be, well, let's go hunting or fishing, or let's express it. Let's say, well, this is frustration, and everybody feels it, and it's right here in my chest. It's pretty universal. Sometimes I feel like that too. And so letting them know that they're not the only one that is experiencing this in this moment, because trauma, being a jerk, trauma wants us to think we're the only one that's ever experienced this awful thing at any time in human history. And if they haven't been taught otherwise, they do believe that. Yeah. So understanding, we can have stress without trauma. Yeah. Kids can have stress. It doesn't have to be trauma. Everyone has stress. You have stress right now. I'm having levels of stress right now because the sweet spot of stress helps you recall information and be sharp and things. That's the sweet spot of stress, called eustress. So we have stress, but it doesn't have to be trauma. And that's one of the things that I hear a lot from our communities is we fear even just a level of required stress in our lives. I don't want to traumatize them. Well, trauma is different than stress. Trauma is overload. And what we can do in our homes is create a sense of safety, that stress doesn't have to be traumatizing. It can be a learning tool. Here's what we can do when we feel this way. And I have a lot of folks will call me or email me if I see them in multiple times and I have to visit their community. I get to visit their communities and things. I know I'm thinking of one woman in Salamanca, New York. She always says, my child, whenever she starts to feel stressed, she says, I can feel it in my stomach. And she says, I'm going to flute breathe. And the child's like 5 years old. Recognizing that stress isn't a bad thing. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming thing. It's a thing that we can harness and control and use for good. So I don't think we'll have time to get through. I want to do, so that was the younger folks. Then I want to do kind of a little bit older school age. And then I want to do adolescence. I may wait till next week to park on adolescent stuff, because there's suicidality and things we want to talk about with them as well. So that's going to be a little deeper. So looking at school age children, a little bit older, they still can express in similar ways as adults. The four horsemen: hyperarousal, you remember that? Constriction, dissociation, numbing out. So the school age kids can show these things. But often what school age kids will do is they'll get in their brain a worst case scenario. And they'll carry around this worst case scenario. What if mom and dad die? What if dad leaves? What if the house catches on fire? They walk around with these worst case scenarios, and it feeds off itself. And at this age, they're getting more resources. If you remember toward the beginning, we talked about internal and external resources. Internal resources are things about my character, my temperament, my personality that help me get through the day. External resources are things outside of me: friends, music, exercise, reading, prayer, hanging out with my family. Those are my external resources. As we age, we just get more resources. The infant sitting in the car seat doesn't have the same amount of resources as the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old, who doesn't have the same amount of resources as the 15-year-old, who doesn't have the same amount of resources that the 25-year-old does. So as we grow and develop, we want to develop healthy, well resources and teach our young people that they do have these resources, that their personality is blossoming. Maybe they're humorous, got that Indian humor, or maybe they're giving or caring or musical or mathematic, or they can speak the language. They have all these different resources. So they're developing them more and more and more. But symptoms develop as school progresses because there's more pressure. School slowly but surely turns up the pressure, which isn't a bad thing, because once you learn more, you have the capacity to learn more. So you have the capacity to learn more. But right around, I would say 3rd, 4th grade, is that right? Teaching and learning changes. You go from rote memorization to a little bit more thinking things through. You have to solve things at that grade, at that age. So school changes. So there's more pressure in school. And that's just how curriculum are developed, that you get to the certain growth and development in the brain, and you have the capacity to problem solve differently, rather than just saying 2 + 2 = 4, 5 + 5 = 11, rather than doing those things. The school age may not have the vocabulary, and here's where it gets tricky, because there's this, they call it a teeter-totter, a seesaw of they're old enough to have more pressure, but it has to be combined with increasing the capacity for them to express it better, to have more safety and more freedoms. There's all this big dance going on. And if they come from traumatized homes, that dance just falls apart, because there isn't a safe spot. So the more safety there is, the more they can increase the pressure. And then we as adults are engaged to help with the expression of that and the recognition of tools to address it. Man, that right there is the trifecta, the trifecta of trauma-proofing our kids, creating a safe environment, giving them the language and the support and the tools to thrive in a higher stress environment, because being able to self-regulate in novel, in new, in different situations is one of the key predictors of trauma proofing. Come on. Come on. That's the first time I hit my desk today. I just got myself going now. Hold on. Is there already 2:40? What's, I don't know what time it is there. I'm in Arizona. If they don't have the tools that adults have the capacity or should have the capacity to give, they may have a lot of self-blame. They don't have the don't have the capacity to address it. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I can't handle it. And really, those are self-taught. I mean, those are things that the adult teaches them. So then they start feeling responsible. Well, I don't know how to do this. I can't control myself. And they haven't been given the tools. And then you start this big snowball, and it starts to grow and grow and grow. And then they start this negative self-talk. Then these self-fulfilling prophecies. Well, I'm the worst kid in the class. I'm the dumbest kid in the class. Then they want to try hard after that. And then maybe they're frightened by their own feelings of anger or grief that maybe they haven't been able to connect with or express. And that can be very confusing for the developing brain. So they need help. And as adults on this meeting here, you're already running toward it. You probably all are awesome parents and have done awesome jobs connecting and teaching and supporting the growth and development of your kids. So be sure to be able to coach others on these things. So all this thing starts to develop, and then they get in a chaotic environment at school. And remember the thalamus, the part of the brain that the filter of all this information that's coming in. So all this information is coming in. The thalamus says, this is a lot. Let's let everything in. And so if they already don't believe in themselves, if they're already afraid of the sensation base that their body's given them, and then you add 20 kids, it doesn't even have to be chaotic, and just having that much information can feel chaotic to the traumatized child. That the thalamus isn't sure what the motives are of this person, what this sound is, what this person is doing up here, what that bump was, and it's all this information, and it feels like chaos in the child. So that even becomes more scary. So then they can't concentrate. You see how all this is kind of snowballing, and it all went back to how do we create a safe environment that we teach internal tools for external events that we can help label, not just the sensation base, because once you get that harnessed through our breathing things and everything we've talked about over the last 11 weeks, once we get that harnessed, how can we help say, well, that's frustration and everybody feels that. So here's what we can do when we have that word. So we either set them up for success or we set them up for overwhelm, and we got to dive in. And even if they're on this trail, we can still dive in and create safety for them. Just because they've started out this way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Otherwise, I would be in a different line of work. You'd probably be in a different line of work. We wouldn't need schools. We wouldn't need health, because we believe that even though this is this now, it doesn't have to be that way. This is just where we are right now. And that's what I make sure I tell kids or adults that I'm working with. It says, yeah, God bless it, you survived this far. Here's where you are now. It got you this far. It doesn't always have to be that way. Let's look at different tools to start harnessing this jolt that's in your body. Until then, maybe they'll have trouble processing new information. Remember, that's one of the key predictors of success, is being able to have self-regulation in novel situations, in new situations. Otherwise, they're sitting in class hyper aroused. So they're moving. The thalamus is just giving all the information from everywhere and saying, this is chaos, and they're just like this. And you've seen kids like this. And they're just like this. And maybe they're even breathing hard because their whole body is either running out of the room, feels like it's running out of the room, or fighting something off, or constricted. And it looks like this. And then they hit the kid next to them, or they create chaos in the classroom, because if I'm having this chaos internally, I want my internal state to match my external state. I want it to be consistent. So I'll create chaos in the environment. That way, oh, this matches up. In that case, this is validated because this is like this and this is like this. That makes sense going together. Otherwise, I sit here feeling crazy, like something's wrong with me. But that hypervigilance, fidgeting, the heightened startle response we talked about last time, the loud noise, because the vagus nerve cranks up the sound in the ears, because it's making sure everything, seeing if there's any danger. So it cranks up the volume on the ears. And so things like that will make people jump. You may have fearful darting eyes, like looking around like this. They may just talk constantly, talking constantly. I've worked with kids in schools, and I go sit in the classroom, and it's just constant talk, not even connected to the teacher or somebody in the classroom. It's just chatter. Every now and then there'll be the teacher will say something and they'll connect to this, or a student will say something, they'll connect to that. But even if the students are giving feedback or the teacher's not giving feedback, it's just constant compulsive talking. Because if I'm feeling like this, if I'm talking, I'm still somehow connecting. I'm not isolating, I'm still somehow connecting, and I'll keep talking, I'll keep talking, I'll keep saying over and over and over again. I repeat myself over and over again. So it becomes that. And it's not like the talk has purpose or connection or moving things forward. It's just words. They may be unable to stay seated. And I've shared with you before that maybe their sleeves drive them crazy, or their tag on their shirt drives them crazy. Their legs are always moving. Maybe they're looking for a fight, or they want to fight. They may be biting. And that's the hyper aroused, but they also could be dissociating. They could inattentive or daydreaming, which is not uncommon, but remember the dissociative state is a survival tool, and it's not a conscious survival tool. It's part of the body saying, let me check out. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm checking out. It's not unusual for kids who have been abused to be loners on the playground. Usually when I go to a school, I'll kind of hang out on the playground. That's the student that I really want to meet with. Because I've shared with you before, the hyperarousal kids, they're getting their social needs met. But the one that's constricted or dissociating, they're not getting any kind of social needs met. They're trying to disappear. And those are the ones I'm more concerned about with suicidal ideation, things like that, because it's better if I weren't here. I don't want to be around anybody, that kind of thinking. And remember, boys tend to externalize, and this is a broad statement. Boys tend to externalize, make things more chaotic. Girls tend to internalize, shut down, be quiet, maybe try to keep the peace more. Again, broad statement. Okay, I'm going to stop there because next week I'm going to go into adolescent symptoms. And I want to talk a little bit about suicidality in adolescence. I think that warrants a pretty long conversation. Let me put a note here.